Welcome to Donkeys and Dragons, a video chat with Lisa and Janet. We're happy to start episode 2 of our video chat series, talking about Agile testing.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about testing as a profession, right?
Yeah, we had a very interesting feedback on Twitter and an idea for a chat from Romeo Mura, and I hope I didn't butcher his name, who I met at European Testing Days a couple years ago. And he suggested this topic because, a lot of people do talk about this these days. Is testing still relevant as a profession, as a specialty? Especially when we even talk ourselves about the whole team approach to Agile testing.
Right. And we know there's different teams, different organizations are in a different spot in their journey as such. There's still a lot of test teams out there that are operating as a separate test team. There's a lot of teams that have 1 or 2 testers on their team. I was working with an organization the other day that actually had almost an even split programmers and testers because they were doing mostly human-centric testing so far, right? They hadn't, they're starting to embrace automation, but they just didn't have that. And they had so many business rules that they just needed that many.
I've been on teams that needed that many because we had such a high risk and complex business domain.
Yeah.
And we did tons of automation, but even with the developers doing a lot of the automation, everybody was busy with all kinds of testing activities.
Right.
So, but I definitely do see more and more teams where the ratio of testers developers is getting lower, or maybe a tester split between 2 teams or something like that.
Yeah, and I don't like to see that because then I don't think that works. In my experience, I don't think splitting them is a good option. I would rather see a tester on one team and the other team not have a tester, and maybe use a coach or a consultant from that tester, but take responsibility for it. I know there's a lot of teams that don't have testers anymore at all, whether it's the developers do. And some teams are very successful at that. But I know I've seen also others that tried it and realized they actually need that expertise, whether it's a separate role or just somebody who needs that. So they will bring a tester back on to their team. So I've seen lots of different things.
Exactly. The team that I just started on a couple months ago was in that situation. They thought they were doing a pretty good job. They were automating at the unit level, at the UI level, at the API level. They were doing some human-centric testing, but they were getting problems in production because there were scenarios they didn't think about, and they started to realize that they needed somebody with more in-depth knowledge and expertise to help. And that's another thing I see a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's I've often heard people say, testers are different. They have a different mindset. I'm not sure if that's really true. I do know that as a tester, you're testing all the time and all the way through. But I do think that they tend to have a more critical mindset. They ask those other questions. What if, right? And so sometimes that's all you need is somebody to sit there and ask those questions, think of those different scenarios, as you said, right?
Right. And another thing is that a lot of development teams realize, well, they've been doing a good job with the automation, with the functional testing, but they start to realize there are so many other quality attributes that they need to be worried about, and they maybe don't have the expertise for security testing, or they don't know how to go about doing performance testing or accessibility, user experience. There are just so many types of testing activities. Maybe they don't really know, what's a good way to learn from production use. And it's not only testers who can help with that, but they want somebody with different skill sets to what they have, different experience to what they have.
Well, and thinking about designing the tests, right? I think that is something I know. On my very first Agile team, I was the only tester on a team, and one of the value I added, I believe, was helping the developers think about other tests and and thinking about designing the tests, what would make it um, the most bang for the buck, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
there is a skill to that, and not everybody has spent time learning that skill.
Well, and I've been surprised on more than one team that where the developers have been automating the tests themselves, they don't give the same love and attention to the test code as they do production code.
Uh,
And they often forget really basic things like, oh, well, this test goes through a lot of steps, but there are no assertions. What are you testing? And things that
yeah,
seem really obvious to me as a tester. And when you point it out, they go, oh, it's just not where their main focus
no,
is.
and you can't blame them,
Yeah.
right? You can't blame them because their focus is. So even when you have the whole team thinking about it,
Hmm.
it's good to have at least one person really concentrating on that, whether you have a designated tester or not. Personally, I think a tester on a team adds value. I will, I will try to recommend that.
Yeah, and things like, I still keep running into teams that have not heard of exploratory testing. They don't know what it is.
That
They
is
don't
very
know why
true.
it's valuable. And they very quickly start to see the power of that and they want to learn more. So
Yeah.
they're just, it's not in the it's not in the blog posts they read, it's not in the books they read, it's not in the webinars they watch, and
That's
so they're not
true.
exposed to it.
Yeah, very, very true. Also, even when we talk about testing throughout, like in DevOps, that whole DevOps cycle, uh, I think having a focus on testing throughout,
Hmm.
really thinking about where make where automation where does it make the most sense, right?
Hmm.
Having that focus, I guess, is the word I want. I think makes a huge difference for teams.
Yeah, when I started my new job, one of the first projects that was being worked on was moving our deployment pipeline to a different tool set and a different infrastructure. And it was something we have a kind of central platform engineering team, and we also have people from that team sort of embedded with the other teams. And so one of the developers and one of these SREs was going to work on migrating to this new infrastructure. We were the first big product within our company to do that. And so they turned to me and said, oh, can you help us figure out a testing strategy? They knew they needed that. They had no idea how to go about it.
Right.
And it was, I'm not an expert at testing infrastructure either. But fortunately, I had been doing the thing I always tell people to do. I took my own advice, building relationships at my new
Yep.
company, and I had been having one-on-ones with people on the platform engineering team, and one of them had actually just talked about this very same tool set that we were migrating to. So, and I even had another meeting already scheduled with him. So I picked his brain. What's the
Yeah.
most area? What are the riskiest areas? Where should we focus our testing?
Right.
And he was happy to share that with me. And then I got back with the developer and SRE, and we crafted a testing strategy together. And
Yep.
I got to help him test it, and it was a lot of fun because it was all new stuff for me. I had not used that particular tool and infrastructure before, so
Learning. So
yeah,
just learning new things. Don't be
we were,
afraid, right? Yeah.
yeah, we were learning together. But the developers just had no idea how to get started with it.
Yeah. And I think that even in the world of, say, chaos engineering, still don't
Hmm.
like that word, but it exists. I think testers can do things like help design the experiments,
Hmm.
right? Because it comes back to where are the risks? What can we do? How might we test this? And so I think they can offer a lot of value there as well.
Yeah, that's something else I've been doing. There's so much I can't do with my new team. We do ensemble programming, and I'm not a coder, so I feel like, oh, I'm not really contributing as much. But I have been able to help the team think about, having focusing on one problem in our retrospectives, and then how can we design an experiment? Oh, what could we
Yes.
measure? And collaborating with them to do that. And maybe people would say that's not a tester's job, but I just think it's something we can bring to the team. We have these different facilitation skills, and
Yeah.
different things like designing experiments and measuring things, because testers like to measure things. And it's just something else we can bring to the party.
Yeah. I think you mentioned something really important there. That's not a tester's job.
Hmm.
And I think that um, what I see is that is becoming less important. That testers are stepping out of that. That's not my job, and
Hmm.
looking to see where they can help,
Hmm.
adding value. Whether it's asking questions at the very beginning of your cycle, saying, "Hey, what problem are we really trying to solve?" It can be something as simple as that, or how are we going to test that story? What does that mean, right? And so I think that the tester's role is changing, um, even in automation, even if you don't code, right?
Hmm.
But by being there and talking about it and understanding what that means, and working with the programmers or the who's ever automating, right? Being there to help, I
Yeah.
think is important.
Bring the ideas, and especially with helping to focus where to spend your time
Yes.
testing. What's the most valuable to the customer? What's the highest risk? Raising those questions and helping the team decide, we can't test everything. So what should we do? Where should we spend
That's
our time?
yeah. I did a talk. I lose. I really lose track of time. But I did a talk yesterday for a conference, and one of the questions came back to say, "How do you know?" Because it was a talk on quality and testing, and they said, come back and said, "How do you know when it's enough?" Right? And it comes back to really asking those questions, being involved, and knowing what's important.
Hmm.
If as a tester you're always on the outside and you take that responsibility for quality, you're going to do everything you can and test as much as you can because you
Hmm.
don't understand. So I
Right.
think it really
Yeah.
comes back to being involved and understanding as a team that it's not my job to ensure quality, but it's
Hmm.
our job as a team, as an organization, to understand what quality is needed.
Yeah, and I think one thing this week I was talking to somebody who's just more starting out in her career, and she was wanting to design her own job as a quality advocate in her organization. She'd only been there a
Right.
little while. She's not somebody with a lot of automation skills, but she sees a lot of other ways she could contribute. And I think this is a great idea. We can design or involve our own jobs to say, what are the abilities I have that would really, really help my team, help our customers, help our product. And I think that's something to consider doing, because there's so
Absolutely.
much scope when you say testing. It
Yes.
means so many things. There are hundreds of different testing activities, uh, you know, help the team build quality. And what does that mean? And so
Yeah.
it's something where you can look at yourself and say, what do I already know? What can I learn? And how can I operate within this organization to bring the most benefit that I can?
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Um, I know that in our last book, Agile Testing Condensed, the very, I think it was chapter 11,
Hmm.
right? We had some practitioners, some of our own instructors from our course,
Right.
Agile Testing for the whole team, to write what they thought the future of testers would be, what they did. And there's some really interesting stories
Hmm.
in there.
Definitely.
We should put that chapter as a download on agiletester.ca.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. After you watch
Okay.
this, go look at agiletester.ca, and
Uh,
we'll have that as a downloader
Yeah,
chapter. Like, one of my favorites is from Alex Schottebeck, and she said testers are quality glue for the team. And I thought that's a great way to see ourselves.
that is, that
There are a
is.
lot of other great perspectives in there.
And I think with that, we will wrap up this session. Let me just put I'll share the screen and we'll put our contact information so that you can ask us further questions.
Yeah, and suggest topics. So we were so happy to have a topic suggested to us. It saved us some thought.
It did, it did. So um, there's us, and here is our contact information. Um, please do email us, contact us on Twitter, give us ideas for our next conversation. because we quite enjoy doing this. It's a good way to do this. I like it.
Absolutely. I mean, Jen and I have these conversations a lot. It's fun to just record one.
All right. And with that, we'll say goodbye and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.